So it's been inspiring to see you all talking to each other. And I always say, when it comes to the environment, uh, we don't have time for competition. I know that there's producers here from the same region, from the same market, and you're trying to fight for space, for consumers' attention. But at the end of the day, if we don't have uh, a sustainable environment, none of this business will be happening. So it was only fitting to finish with a panel that talks about collective work. And to moderate this panel, Ray O'Connor. And Ray, I will let you introduce your panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Yes, the final panel of a fantastic conference. Have we still got good energy in the room? Have we still got good energy in the room? All right. Okay, well, I'll get stuck into it straight away. I'd like to introduce Pierre Naviaux from he heads up, he's Director of Sustainability Department in the Comité de Champagne, taking care of 16,000 growers, 140 cooperatives, can you imagine, and 450 champagne houses. And Tom Owtram from the Sustainable Roundtable, who have already jumped straight into action and collected a great number of very influential members. It's a non-profit organization, and Tom will tell us about that. And then François who's come from the Loire, an expert on pruning and curative techniques in the vineyard. He's written a guide on pruning, re-released in 2022. Il y a une nouvelle édition. Wait, okay, by now. And so we're going to hear from each of these, but we'll kick off, please, Pierre, if you can take us. Actually, if you started in 2003, the progress you're up, but what was the instigation? What kicked off or what drove people in the area to begin back in 2003?
Okay, well, the initial idea was to build a big environment management system. We had in the 90s several environment projects, but we lacked a comprehensive framework to manage the environmental impact at the scale of the industry in Champagne. So doing a first assessment to build an action plan, we realized we had an issue on carbon and energy, but at that time we had no idea what it really meant. So we went and see the main expert at that time, which is Jean-Marc Jancovici. Maybe you've heard of him. Is the creator of the bilan carbone methodology in France. So we are very proud to say that we are among the 2 or 3 first bilan carbone in history. And the results were a bit striking. Can you show maybe the slides? I don't know if is it working. Yes. Not the sponsor. Do you have the well? Yeah, I have slides. Oh, well, I will tell you, okay. Okay, it's too bad. I had a nice diagram. I will just explain to you. So our core activity, growing grapes and making wine, is less than 15% of the carbon footprint. Inside of that, we have the fuel consumption of the tractors, we have the emission for fertilizer, and we have the energy consumption of the winery. Then we have 30% of the impact that is caused by the transport, 13 of people, and 17 of the freight, the transportation of our products. So this is the part that is a bit outside of our activity, and then the rest of it, so more than 50% of our carbon footprint, is what we are buying, actually, goods and services. There is the impact about 3-5% of recycling our pomace, our waste and byproducts. So it goes to the distillery, it consumes some energy, but then it recycles in 12 products. So this is a good investment, but it still has a carbon impact. And then the big elephant in the room is more than 30% of our carbon footprint is made by the packaging. And 27 only is just the glass bottle. Okay, so that was a big surprise, because before that, when we were talking about carbon and energy, everybody was focused on the fuel in the tractors, and then we realized we had to really widen our scope of action. So based on this first diagnosis, we went and see our stakeholders, and we built together an action plan. So this is the Champagne Carbon Plan. And we have 90 action in 6 main categories. So it's sustainable viticulture. It's too bad I had very nice icon on that. Sustainable viticulture with a focus also on tractors and going to electric, as we saw from the colleagues from New Zealand, robots. So this is the first topic. Then we have another topic on sustainable winemaking and a focus on eco-design of the packaging. Another topic on the buildings and energy efficiency. Then we have transportation of people and the freight. And this is, I was talking about the stakeholder. This is one good example of working collectively because, for instance, we have been phasing out airplane for the freight, so it seems easy. But then the market has to accept to get the product sometime a bit later. Okay, if some big Hollywood star has a surprise anniversary, well, maybe they should foresee it a bit more than 2 days before. So that's the kind of topic we have been working on. For instance, we have been supporting some companies developing cargo sail since 2016, and this is really a promising solution. This year, the first prototype of big scale cargo sail will go on the sea, but at the end of the day, the importer has to accept to pay a bit more for this to get rid of fossil fuel when crossing the Atlantic. Okay, so that's an example of working together on that topic. The fifth thematic is circular economy. So recycling. I was talking about the pomace, but it's the same with the wood from the viticulture. We are putting it back to the soil, and it allows us to reduce the amount of fertilizer. But at every part of the activity, we try to recycle everything that we don't, what we used to call waste. It could be cork, going to make some shoes, for instance. We have many examples of trying to find what we call orphan waste that go to incineration and say, hey, maybe we should do something better with this specific waste. And last but not least, the sixth area of action is governance tools. And Megan present that very well this morning in New Zealand. It's really outstanding what they do. We have some similar stuff, maybe a bit less efficient. We have an eco calculator, but I have to admit I will steal some of your ideas to put into ours because it's not so well done. We try to put carbon criteria at every level of the decision making, with some training, with some guides of good practices, with the eco calculator, or also in economic incentive, for instance, because we don't want the carbon plan to be another complex framework that we are adding in top of the AOC regulation and the certification, etc. It has to, in French, infuse, like the tea, penetrate every part of the activity at every time you take a decision that can make an impact on the carbon footprint. And some of the results that we achieve, for instance, we have today 70% of the vineyard that is environmentally certified. So this allows us to reduce by a huge amount the amount of fertilizer that is being used, but also the type of fertilizer. We are using the majority of its organic fertilizer and not mineral fertilizer. This is also allowing us to getting rid of the anti-frost system. I was talking about that this morning, for instance. We have a certification called Sustainable Viticulture in Champagne, where we have 100 criteria, and not all of them are about carbon. We have biodiversity, we have plant protection, etc. But we have some criteria on the carbon. For instance, eco-designing the material that you use, using more wood and less steel in the vineyard. Seems a bit trivial, but that's also very important for our carbon footprint. And regarding packaging, we have been trying to make everything lighter. So the first action was to make the new standard champagne bottle a light bottle. So we went from 900 grams to 835 grams. So it seems tiny, but you multiply it by 300 million bottles, and you see that's a big gain. It's about 17,000 CO2 tons of CO2 per year that we are saving thanks to this measure. We would like to go even further down, but now we are working. It's more R&D long-term project with the glass maker, because we have 6 bars of pressure in the champagne bottle, and then we don't want to take any risk with the security of the consumer on that part. But we can work on other parameters. For instance, the percentage of recycled glass that goes into the bottle. So we are very proud to say that in Champagne, the amount of recycled glass is 90%. You only have 10% of virgin glass in the making of a champagne bottle. So this has allowed us to decrease by a huge amount. Between a virgin glass bottle and a 90% glass bottle, you divide by 2 the CO2 impact of this bottle. Using lighter cardboard boxes, also shorter caps, getting rid of tin caps, because this was considered as premium, but is very heavy and very complicated to recycle. So now we're trying to getting rid of it. The new innovation is paper caps, but for the moment it's still a prototype. It's coming in some small scale producer, but it's still not mature to deploy it on the industry scale. But it's really promising. And as you could see in the graph, the results that we are getting today, we are updating the carbon footprint every 5 years. And so the last time was 2018. We are still crunching the number for 2023. And between 2003 and 2018, we decreased the CO2 emission by 15%. And at the same time, the amount of bottles produced increased by 7%. So that was we were quite proud of that, because usually you see the carbon intensity decrease, but since you have some economic growth, and that relates to what we saw at the beginning of the conference, usually the activity growth completely destroy the total gain. And in nature doesn't care about the ratio. Okay, you can decrease the carbon intensity of the bottle, but if at the same time you produce so many more bottles that you are just emitting more CO2, at the end of the day, you just lost the war against climate change. So this is very, very important to reduce in absolute and not just in relative. So we have an objective of going to minus 25% of CO2 by 2025 and net zero by 2050. And to do that, so we have to decrease our total emission by 75% in 2050, very challenging, but also to be able to compensate the remaining 25% by storing more carbon in the soil, in the hedgerows and the trees around the vineyard. But also at one point we will have to develop more a compensation project about 15-18% of our emission in the neighboring activities on forest, agriculture, wetlands, to increase the natural carbon storage. And yes, well, I'm regarding the team of today working collectively. This is a plan that has involved, as you say, the 16,000 growers, 300 houses, and 140 cooperative, because we are all extremely related in Champagne. The growers, they produce 90% of the grapes, and the merchants, the houses, they sell 70% of the bottle. So we have no choice but working together. Okay, we are very dependent, and we have one common good, which is the name Champagne. So this is really a good asset to work together. But so far, working together has worked quite well inside Champagne. We have decreased more in viticulture, winemaking, in our internal activities. But working together as a supply chain, as a value chain, it's much more complicated. Working together with the packaging producers, working together with the market is always much more complicated. So I think that's the new frontier, and that's where we need to work really better, and not just pointing, because that's what we see today. The market say, yeah, we want more eco-design packaging and we want more certified wine. Then the merchant say to the grower, yeah, I want more green grape, and to the glassmaker, I want better glass. And then we are, but meanwhile, we are forgetting to do what David Pendon was saying yesterday. Everybody has to do their homework. Okay, it's 50-50 work. Otherwise, it's not working. So thank you.
Bravo. I have plenty of questions, but I'll save those. That was fantastic. Thank you very much. Tom, you've pulled together companies from across the whole industry and then oversee the management of their polite interactions. Can you tell us how you coordinate all of that?
Yeah, I'm pleased to say it's not just me, but it is a big task and it is a big project. So we are growing as a team, but over the last few years, we've been really sort of getting ourselves together in terms of governance and in terms of an agenda for action. But just to give you a sort of a brief and short history lesson on the SWR, we were formed in 2021, and it was as a response to a call to action during a similar international conference, which due to COVID was held online. But we had over 60 industry experts from different parts of the value chain, over 800 people attending online. So a huge amount of engagement in the different topics which are being discussed, which covered everything from proliferation of standards, biodiversity in the vineyard, regenerative viticulture, to packaging. But two of the key themes that came out of that conference was the need for greater coordination and collaboration in the wine value chain, and also the need to address the misalignment between existing sustainability standards. And that was an issue particularly raised by the retailers who are taking part in the discussion. And as a response to that, we formed a founding committee, which was a collection of different industry professionals, both in and outside of the industry, including the former head of sustainable agriculture at the Rainforest Alliance. So bringing sort of expertise from other agricultural sectors, which is an established, so a roundtable is an established method for building consensus within industries around sustainability. And it's been proven successful in other agricultural crops, such as palm oil and cocoa. So we were looking to sort of build on the experience of other sectors, but also to build on the work that's already been done in the wine sector. So starting with the sort of sustainability standards, how we're sort of approaching that. We are in the process of creating a global reference framework for sustainable wine. So this is a sort of leveling up of the existing standards, which from the conversations and discussions we've had over the last couple of days, sounds like a sort of an important issue that needs to happen urgently, both for the trade, but also for the consumer, so that we can sort of confidently talk about what sustainability in wine means, and also better communicate that to the consumer. So we basically carried out an evaluation of the different sustainability standards and established this reference framework, which is sort of our tool for understanding how the different standards compare with each other, but also where are the gaps and where are the areas where standards lead in, but also where there's need for improvement. As has been sort of mentioned, there's many different sort of philosophies and ways of thinking about sustainability, depending on the region you go to, and therefore, that's resulted in different levels or different approaches to defining how these sustainability standards operate. Some being sort of more inclusive, which is great in terms of bringing everyone along the journey and working through the issues together, and others setting the bar very high, which is great in terms of sort of from an aspirational perspective. But then is it really sort of bringing people together towards that goal? Another issue which we've been tackling over the last 12 months is the bottle weight. That's obviously been a sort of recurring theme brought up over the last couple of days. So as it's been mentioned, the bottle weight accounts for approximately 30% of a winery's carbon footprint. So in order to address that, we carried out a research project which was sponsored by 6 different retailers who were also keen to be able to establish the evidence base to take a position on why we should reduce bottle weight and try to bust some of the myths that exist around heavyweight bottles being directly connected to quality. And through the research process, we were able to establish reasons why lighter weight glass can be successful in terms of putting it out in the market. And as a result, we were able to form this accord with 11 different retailers who have agreed to reduce the average bottle weight of their still wines from 550 grams to below 420 grams by the end of 2026. So quite an ambitious target, which we've been able to bring together retailers from across different geographies, including Whole Foods Market, Waitrose in the UK, Systembolaget in Sweden. So that really demonstrated, I suppose, the opportunity of working collectively around shared issues, where it isn't really a competitive issue, but it's a sustainability value add. So that's been sort of, one of our big successes over the last 6 months, which has sort of validated the collaborative approach. And in response, or as a follow-up to that, and on the back of that success, we've actually formed a retailers working group. So this now has more than 15 different retailers involved with, and building on what we did with the bottle weight cord, they're now working through other issues where they can see the opportunity to align and to avoid duplication of effort and to create efficiencies. Because I think ultimately, if sustainability is going to be scaled, then they need to find ways of addressing these issues together. Another issue that we've been looking at is labour standards. So obviously, sustainability isn't just an environmental issue. People are key to how the wine industry operates, and as has been faced in other sectors, there are issues with migrant labour, and due to the seasonal nature of the wine industry, it does leave it exposed to potential abuses. So 3 of the Nordic monopolies sponsored a workshop series, 3-part workshop series, looking at the issues around labour standards and human rights, just to introduce the subject both to our members, but then also to our community. So we first looked at what are labour standards and human rights. We then looked at other sectors for examples and case studies of what does good practice look like. And then we looked at sort of what are the issues in the wine industry that we need to be aware of and need to be sort of looking into. So this is sort of initial step towards addressing the issue in a collaborative way towards sort of a shared resolution. And I think that's sort of a running theme that we want to sort of promote is working collectively as is the title of this subject, and the benefits of that. It's about saving time, it's about saving money, it's about making efficient use of resources. And based on the bottle weight, based on the work we're doing around standards, I think there's a real opportunity for us to sort of go forward and work more closely with each other and benefit from it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's interesting to note that you had someone from the Rainforest Alliance, so an external person come in they've been working on these kind of challenges for a while, and it's good for us in the industry. We talk to each other a lot, which is good, and sometimes we just listen to ourselves. And so it's nice to sort of get a kick up the backside from someone external. It's very healthy it's like an audit. And I just like to add that in that group of people with the bottle weight accord, and a lot of those are competitors. So the Wine Society, Naked Wines, Laithwaite's, Waitrose has no competitors. They're out on their own. But they, people just instantly dropped what they were doing and said, yeah, okay, this is bigger than all of us and our business, so let's do it. So it's commendable, but I think it's well led by you guys. So bravo. Francois, I was in the Loire 14 years ago, but maybe about that, and there was an English agent there, Charles Sidney, and he was giving a speech to his collection of winemakers, and he first time I heard about courtage, and it was basically combating the ESCA. But you've been working in this sector since 2002, c'est ça? And maybe you can explain to everyone here a little bit about courtage and what kind of journey winemakers in the region, in the Loire, have taken since then.
Okay, thanks. Just before answering your question, I'd like to contextualize the situation, because I come from Centre-Loire. This is a very small wine region in France at the beginning of the Loire Valley. And we have only 7 AOP and 1 IGP. The most well-known is Sancerre, of course, but we have very good wine in Pouilly-Fumé, Quincy, Reuilly, Maine-tout-Salon, Côteau-du-Génois, Châteaubriand. And we have a very unique model in France, because Sicavac, the firm for the one I work, belongs to all that AOP. We decided to create Sicavac almost 30 years ago. And we have different missions. We have a wine analysis laboratory. We give some consulting, independent consulting, to people who want us to help them, and they pay for that. And we have collective missions, a lot of different collective missions. And our philosophy is that when we have a lack in our knowledge, when we want to answer to a question, if we can, we make an experiment. Sometimes we can't, but each time we can, we do that. And these experiments are financed partially by our individual advices, and a part by VC, that is the interprofessional office. So we are working on a lot of subjects. Curatage is one of them. We have been working a lot on the managing of the soil. I won't speak about that because we had different people speaking about that today and yesterday, even if sometimes we have different observations. As Etienne Netling said yesterday, we have been working a lot on massal selection too. That was a very important subject for us. And one of the main problems in our region is trunk disease, ESCA. And we have been working, I came in 2002 in Sancerre, in Centre-Loire. And for me, very quick, it was obvious that the way of managing the vineyards had a big impact on this disease. And pruning became obvious to be one of the main parameters for that disease. And we produced the first book in 2008 and the third edition last year. And it has a lot of success, because I think we sold more than 10,000 books at this day. Curatage, to answer your question, is a little part of our work. And when I started to work on pruning and the impact of pruning on wood disease, I finally found in, I think, 2005, a book wrote more than 100 years ago about the work of Eugène Poussard. He was a vine grower in Charente, in France, and he discovered a lot of things about that. And he spoke about curatage at this date. the book was written in 1921. So I decided to do the same as he did, and I bought a hammer and tools to work the wood. And the purpose is to go inside the trunk, and with this disease we have dead wood, and a part of this dead wood has a certain sort of decay. We call it white rot. It's like sponge, if you know that. And the purpose is to find this white rot and to leave it as a dentist with a tooth. It's the same work, but we use a little bigger tools. At the beginning, I tried with my hammer, but it was very long, so it was efficient but not useful. And a wine grower of our region decided to do the same thing because he had this intuition, and he took a chainsaw, but at this date he had a big chainsaw. So I thought it was a little bit dangerous, but very efficient. Then the evolution permitted to create smaller and smaller chainsaw, an electric chainsaw. So the work was easier and more efficient, and we made a lot of experiments on that. And in 2010, we decided to show all this work to all the wine growers of our region, and we decided to show it in a vineyard belonging to that first wine grower called Joël Sirotte, who started this work. He had a block, and just close to his block, there were another block belonging to another winery. It was planted exactly the same day, 25 years before. And when we observed these vineyards 1 week before harvest, it was so different. Joël Sirotte vineyard had all the vines present, almost between 7 and 8 clusters per vine. It was perfect. And on the other side, half of the vine were dead. So to compensate, the vigor was higher. The number of clusters per vine was a lot higher, and the quality was not the same. And just a few days before harvest, it was obvious just looking at the clusters. And a lot of winemakers decided to start this technique. At the beginning, they considered that Joël Sirotte with his big chainsaw was a little bit full. But at this moment, they considered that he was true, and a lot of people started to do that. And nowadays, we can consider that 70% of the wine growers from Centre-Loire are practicing this technique.
Thank you
Merci
very
beaucoup.
much. Thank you.
Pierre, I'd like to ask, from everyone that we've listened to in the past 2 days, the Champagne region seems to have a great deal of experience kicking off this initiative in 2003. If someone, for example, British Columbia or any new region, or not new, but any organization, what can you share with them today which would give them a sort of faster route to collaboration so they could implement some of the very progressive means that you've put in place already?
Well, that's complicated, but I will try to summarize the priority. I think first, get some knowledge, expertise on carbon footprinting. Because we talk a great lot about greener practices, etc. But until you actually measure it and you see what is really the impact of solution A versus solution B, well, you're never sure that you're really going the right direction. And I really like what Federico said about the collateral impact of going bulk, is that sometimes an idea that looks interesting at first, when you see all the consequences, you see, well, maybe that's not so. A good example is still on the packaging, the reusable bottle. we have some life cycle assessment that show that it's interesting if you use it in a very close consumption area, like what is done for beer in Germany, for instance. But as soon as you start exporting, well, it's more complicated, and usually it's not a good idea from a carbon footprint. So first, you need to have the capacity to measure the actual carbon footprint of any action. Then you have to give some tools to the different vineyards, because everybody wants to assess their own carbon footprint. And if you it's great to have a calculator that can do that very quickly, and that is tailor-made for your activity, because a consultant will never know how to make, I don't know, a cognac, for instance, is very specific. You have some distillation process, so it's very important to have it tailor-made for your activity. And then the third dimension is to work at the same time, based on what I just said, on the individual progress plan of every vineyard, but at the same time to tackle collectively some big actions for the packaging, for the transport, that can only be made together, because just one company, even the biggest, we have some huge companies in Champagne, even for them, it's too big of a challenge, and we have to be all together as a region for packaging, for transport, for instance.
Just one more question on your presentation. You mentioned the removal of foil from a champagne bottle, and that you're in a trial period of that. Is that right? Foil, okay. Or maybe you can clarify what you said about removing the capsule, moving to paper, and has there been any resistance, or how is the adoption of that in market?
Well, I was mentioning the tin cap, because it's we measure one good example of being able to measure the tin can. It's like the coiffe en français, so like the shiny part on the top of the bottle, the foil. Okay, and so traditionally it was tin, which is very heavy, and the carbon footprint of one tin foil is about 40 grams. Then if we use a lighter solution, like the industry standard today is aluminum, which is very interesting because you can recycle it very easily. It can be separated very easily. And we are more about 18 grams. So this is very good. The standard is already very good. And the move from the tin to the aluminum was like 15 years ago in the first carbon plan. And now the current move is to have shorter, because basically you divide by 2 the impact, very straightforward, and also to have other materials like paper. But to do that, we need to be sure that the paper will stand the transit, that will not degrade, the storage, that it will really be adapted to the bottle. So it's a bit technical. It can be done quite easily by hand by little growers, but for big companies that's more tricky. And this topic is interesting in terms of being able to calculate, because we had some makers that came saying, yeah, we have a new material, bio-based material, for instance, or some aluminum that was having the feel of the tin, you know, it's very pleasant for the consumer, and it was actually very heavy and very impacting solution. We say, let's say with simple aluminum, classical one. And so, yeah, another just to finish, sorry. And since we are in the packaging part, we also had some suppliers saying, yeah, now we have cotton labels. It's bio-based. Yeah, cotton label. Well, paper is bio-based also, and if you're aware of environmental impact of the cotton making, you know that let's keep it for the clothes, because we don't need to. You are completely exploding the carbon footprint of a label by putting cotton. And some producers were thinking they were doing the green action by putting the cotton label.
Very good, thank you. Tom, I'll come to you regarding what you were sharing about working collaboratively, but how that can influence policy, and how realistic it is? I mean, is it, we've seen what's been shared here for the SAQ. Outside, what else can be done, and how realistic is an outcome of little old us in the wine industry influencing big policy?
I think it's a great question. I think there's a role for the wine industry to have a bigger voice in terms of how policy is developed, to ensure that we are on the front foot and not on the back foot in terms of how it impacts the industry. I mean, from the Roundtable's perspective, we are exploring setting up an office in Brussels to be on the front line of tackling some of these issues head on before they become policy, and actually work maybe against the industry or don't work in its best interest. So I think we do need to be opening up more lines of communication with policymakers. But I think in order to do that, we do need to come together and be more unified in how we communicate the work we're doing and the issues we're tackling and the realities of the challenges that the industry faces. So I think there's some work to do in order for us to get to a point where we can start having these conversations with more confidence. And I think that's, a core focus of the Roundtable, is to provide that vehicle to be able to develop that consensus and to be able to create a sort of a joined up approach to sustainability. But as Pierre's highlighted during his presentation, there's so much best practice out there. There's so much we can leverage in terms of the storytelling, the positive narrative. So I think we have to see it as an opportunity rather than a sort of as a sort of threat.
Thank you. A question for you, François. So I'm not sure if you're familiar entirely with the Sustainable Roundtable, but as they started to grow and people started to join this, and so from the System Bolaget to retailers, even Conchiatoro, I think, are members as well, big, large wine companies. Is there something that you can see in a similar sense from a pruning point of view, but in another region? Basically, can you envisage another region seeing the success of the pruning techniques that you've put in place in Centre-Loire and them looking to adapt based on the positive outcomes you've already had?
I think I was perhaps 3 days in Centre-Loire since November, because everyone wants to practice that. So yes, of course, a lot of regions want to have a better way of pruning. Everywhere where we have this type of problem, people understand that pruning is really important, not only for wood disease, but to have sane vines, to have a good homogeneity in the vine for a lot of reasons. So yeah, a lot of region try to do that.
Yeah, there's already adaptation to it. Yeah, very good. I don't know how we're doing for time, but I've got plenty of questions. But are there no? I can continue. More questions? Oh, great. Okay, so yeah, let me see. Oh, questions for the crowd. Okay, sorry. Bon, est-ce qu'il y a des questions?
Hi.
Hi.
Me again. Suzanne from Unipol. I'm wondering, first off, I wanted to say thank you to Sustainable Roundtable, because I've been listening to the free conferences. I find it's got a plethora of information, and I recommend it to everyone to listen to. So thank you for the work you're doing. In that same scope, I think that we're all here to hear about solutions that we could put forward, but I think it's also important. We're here because we know there's something to do. Perhaps there's also a starting point of sharing a vulnerability report, so that drives the message on why we need to put things into action right now. So what does 2050 look like? Does wine still exist in 2050 if we don't take action now? What does 4% change in temperature mean for each appellation? Maybe it's not Sustainable Roundtable that does it. Maybe it's every appellation. So Champagne does it for their appellation. Here's the vulnerability report. This is why we have to do it. Burgundy, here you go. But I think that information for wine drinkers will drive the point forward to why we need to take action now, is my wine that I like to drink now will not exist later on if I don't take action. So obviously everyone here is here for the same reason, but is that something that we can work towards so that the layman's people who don't have that visibly in their mind already can be really driven home for them?
Excellent question. Who wants it? You're next to me, so you get it first.
Yeah, please, Etienne,
Yes.
help me.
Yeah, so just from an OIV perspective, we are discussing this within the environment and the sustainability group. What you're looking for, what you ask for a vulnerability assessment is actually a resilience assessment. So you want to define a set of assets, how you can define a region from, let's say, physical attributes, ecological attributes, but also looking at the economics, different assets that define the resilience of a region, and then defining indicators how to associate metrics to that assets. And once you do that analysis, you can then say, but this region is strong in terms of resilience for those indicators or metrics, but extremely vulnerable for that. So that's already very important to know where you can adapt and then answer your question why we are vulnerable. Because then we see, for instance, we have a dry and warm climate, we have limited soil and water availability, so that's where we're vulnerable. But we're extremely resilient for this and this region. And the fact that we need those indicators allow us at a national level to understand how government can have stronger influence through policymakers, how we can help and how we can provide input. But at the same time, it's also allowing us to be more sensitive, how local impacts are sensitive to contextual factors, and that adaptation is not as transparent as mitigation, and that adaptation needs local solutions.
Thank you. Is there another question in the room? Right here.
Question for Tom. Do you envisage a future where there is a global sustainable wine certification that brings all? I mean, there's so many different certifications all around the world. We've been discussing that and how that message to consumer is convoluted because of that. It might not be the round table, but it sounds like it could be, that could bring more of a global standard together, that maybe locally you are, for example, sustainable wine grown BC, but into the global market you have a global certification that that you can also buy into and be part of.
Yeah, it's a great question, and something which we're sort of working through with our members, but also in collaboration with the existing sustainability standards. I think there's some work to do to get to a point where we can make that decision. But I think if there was a way of being able to simplify how we communicate sustainability, and if that was one label, then that could be a means of doing it. But I think it's got to be backed up with, like we've been discussing, the sort of storytelling and aligning on the sort of narrative around sustainability and you know, the challenges and the vulnerabilities and you know, how we're addressing those. But I think it would be a bit sort of premature to sort of say that that's the destination. So, you know, I think we do need to work through this together to work out what's going to be the best option for the industry. But I think as an initial focus, it's got to be around how do we address the sort of misalignment between different standards and different approaches towards sort of you know, better, more unified, I keep using this word, but unified approach to sort of talking about sustainability and taking action.
I was telling a joke to Tom this lunch. There is a cartoon about standards. I don't know if you know it. It's Situation A. There are 16 international standards about electric plugs. And the guy say, that's 16, that's insane. Let's build an international standard that encompasses every need. Situation B, 1 year later, there are 17 international standards. And so, yeah, we all dream of one standard to rule them all. But actually, you have so many different needs and so many different contexts. For instance, we have no irrigation for the moment. It's still not an issue, even not a topic of discussion for us. And in some region, it's like the capital environment issue. So I think what they are trying to build is quite clever, to have compatibility or interoperability and to have a common grid to read them easily. And maybe that's the first very pragmatic way of doing it, because I've been working in the wine for 15 years and I've seen, so that's not that much, but at the same time, I've seen many initiatives like that, even at the OIV, and in the end, it's just one general document, but that doesn't achieve the goal of getting rid of all this complexity.
Thank you very much. Thank you, the panel, and thank you everyone for staying on to the end.
Excuse me, wait. Can I just say a small word?
Please, excuse me.
Just with all I heard these 2 days, a lot of very interesting things. But I think we have to be very careful not to make a confusion between a purpose and a solution. We had a lot of very beautiful purposes proposed today and yesterday. I think we are all agree with these purposes, but sometimes the solution is a lot more complicated, and we can't do everything we want everywhere. And the risk for the wine growers, because the winemakers here in this place, I think everyone wants to do better. They spend time, they spend money to be here today and yesterday, so it's obvious that they want to do better. But some things are not always possible just now, so be careful not to create a culpability for them. So I think we have to thank them for all the work they do.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to welcome Michelle on stage, and so we'll take ourselves off stage and hand over to you. Okay, right.
Sorry. On the last conference, one of the really inspired speaker was Johan Reneke from South Africa, and he was speaking, and it was online because it was in pandemic. And at the end of his speech, all the speakers were in tears, and people were listening, were chatting, and saying, "Oh my God, like we're just." And he finished his presentation. He said, "Whatever you may dream of, start it now." And it's going to be, it's not going to be easy. There's going to be a lot of people telling you it's impossible, and most people will tell you it's impossible. I was told that when I had this dream in 2016 to start this conference. People said to me, people are not going to show up for half a day. And then I did 1 day, and people told me they're not going to show up for 1 day. And I think today, you just, because of you, you showed up, and you were there, and you stayed until the very end. And everything is possible. And I think at the break, Barry Dick from White Rose said to me, I just turn around and I look at who's in the room. And we have amazing people in this room, and look at each of you, who you reach. And if we just use us, and that's just the start, and you talk to other people, well, the power we have here in this room and continue those conversations is incredible. So I want to thank you for being here, for making the time. I want to thank my speakers. If you just want to come, everyone. The speakers, if you could come to the stage, please. I have to talk more, so you can sit, you can do, can sit on the edge just to make it comfortable. If we can put back also behind the pictures of the sponsors. Yeah. Thank you to the SAQ, the major sponsor, for jumping on this year. It meant so much, and it gives me hope that together we will go further. So thank you for your trust. My official partner, Gérard Bertrand, Wines of Chile, Consul des Vins du Québec, Wine and Spirit Magazine, Advini, Bonterra, L'Allemand, Venom, who donated generously all of the glasses, Boisset, Wines of Chile, and all of the other sponsors. Every drop means something, and thank you. A big part of this year was difficult. It was getting the money to make this happen. To 2023, I think we all know it's a difficult year for all of you. It's a recession time. It's not easy. And you made sure that you donated, and I want to thank you for that. Whew. It's over soon. Finding a venue for this was not easy. Marché Bon Secours, Eric, Alexandre, you were amazing. You helped us so much. So thank you for being generous and giving us a break on the venue price, and also accommodating us over many days. So thank you so much. I have a fantastic technical team behind. My longtime friend Nicolas Venn is behind the camera, helped me to gather an amazing team. Sébastien from Winifred, Rosaire from MK2. Thank you so much. You were also very generous with your advice and your time. Thank you so much. My better half always kind of make jokes, because when we send documents, we say Michelle Bouffard and her team. There's not a big team. Sorry to break the news. I started the year by myself, and 4 months ago, Hélène Dion called me, and she said, "How are you going to do this all by yourself? I want to help you." And I said, "I need help. It's over my head." So Hélène Dion has been with me for 4 months, and she's treated this project like it was her own. You've been amazing. Thank you. I also have Julie Mule, who she's been behind all the graphic design, but she's also multitasking. She's very efficient, and she has a background in sustainability, so she's been helpful in many, many ways. Camellia Senescence for the tea, Agence Papier for the coffee, Cryo, thank you, and thank you for bringing your bottle, and I hope you continue to keep that good habit. And of course, all the volunteers, please give them a round of applause. It's just part of it, because some of the days we had more. They started to work on Friday, and some of those people have highly paid job, and they took off some vacation day to be here. Some of them are students, so I hope the students were inspired by what you saw today. And I think the new generation has so much to do. And thank you, Kathleen from ETHQ, to bring your student here to work with us. Thank you very much. Marilyn Demande was helping. She was at the coach. She helped with the logistic. My very first edition of 2017, I was literally at the coat check welcoming people and then moderating on the stage. And Marilyn called me. She's like, "You cannot be doing the coat check. I'll be there." And she's still there. So thank you, Marilyn, for being there from the very day. And Véronique Lemieux, who's been doing social media. She makes wine herself in Eastern Township, and you've always been a big supporter of this project, and you were one of the first one to reach out this year to help. So thanks for your time. I really hope I did not miss anything, and if I did, I'm sorry. I'm a bit emotional, but I want to finish this with thanking the speakers, because you have so much information that you shared, and I know it was frustrating because each time it was like, oh my God, we just started to talk about this. We need to continue. It's a bit the purpose of the conference, because if we add each panel 3 hours, you would have left and you would have gone tired. So I think the idea is just to show you what we can do together, and hopefully we planted some seed in your brain, and you will continue, and you've created a network amongst you from the speakers and you there, and you will continue to explore solutions together. That is truly my goal, and I promise there will be a 5th edition. I've already wrote tons of subject I want to talk about. So we'll see you in 2 years. Thank you, thank you, thank you.